started.
Write all my own packages.
So, real quick, we have some announcements. The big one is that we'd like to announce something that we've been working on for quite a while now, which is we're going to start having, we call them red team or black hat talks, workshops, I should say. And the idea is that you come in and we're going to give you the basic skills to do a CTF game. For those of you who aren't familiar with CTF, it's basically a network where you're trying to hack into targets and not be hacked back by other people. So there's multiple teams competing on this network. And so we're going to have several workshops, 4 to be exact, 2 this quarter and 2 the quarter after, in third quarter, that will be teaching a variety of these skills, offensive and defensive, networking, security skills. So the first of these talks is not going to be this Friday, but the Friday after that. So that's, let me look on my magical calendar.
Is it magical because it changes it?
So that will be the 17th of February, and then the second will be, I believe, the 24th of February. And then, if my mental calendar is not incorrect, Frag Night will be the week after that. So 3 Fridays in a row, we're going to have stuff here from 6 to 10. So if you're interested, let us know by RSVP through email. So other than that, today we're going to have fire talks.
Also on the same vein as the Capture the Flag, DEF CON's Capture the Flag qualifiers are coming up soon. So if you like this stuff, definitely talk with one of us, I guess myself especially, because to get into the DEF CON Capture the Flag competition, you have to qualify for it before you can participate.
Now, for somebody who's never done this before, what is that?
It's essentially the same kind of idea as what we've been pitching, where you jump on a network, you're essentially trying to take over as many systems and control as many systems as possible, except it's ridiculously competitive because it's against people from all over the world who do this as a living or as fun or combination of both. So
There's also at DEF CON, there's OCTF, which is OpenCTF.
which is also really fun.
It's less
competitive,
perhaps.
still hard. I did some of it last year. It was still ridiculously hard. It's also where I learned IPv6 in a matter of half an hour because their entire network was IPv6, no IPv4. So that was fun. Great learning experience.
So, and then at Frag Night, Gradius has a CTF framework, which he's going to be demoing. And by demoing, we mean we're going to allow you on the network to play around.
Break stuff.
And break stuff. And then we'll reset it for you and you can break it again. And again. So that's going to be really epic, and you'll be able to use the skills that you learned in the workshops at Frag Night when you're not landing it up. So,
What's up?
so to lead in, we have Gradius talking about Swift CTF in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. I lied. I have one more announcement. What day is it?
It's Tuesday.
Okay, we are having a fundraiser, which is really important. It's really critical that you help us with our funds. We're going to be going to Shakey's on the 15th from 6 to 9 and if you tell them that it's for Swift, then they'll put your receipt in a box and we get 20% of that minus drinks. 25%.
And it's a social too, so you guys should come and have fun.
Yeah, so the idea is that we're all going to be at Shakey's, hang out, maybe even do like a mini raffle or just fun activities as a club. So hopefully we'll see you there. Gradius.
Yeah, good talk now. Okay, so a couple people have been asking, like, what is the CTF? You keep talking about it. You keep talking about things about offensive security and breaking into machines and that sort of thing. Your project that isn't going anywhere, like, is the CTF finished sort of thing? So I figured, Fire Talk, what better than to actually get into details about this Capture the Flag network that I'm setting up. Okay, so essentially, what my network is designed to give you is, you're given a login to most likely a Linux machine. You probably wouldn't want to log into a Windows machine to be doing any of that will have the Linux operating system with tools that will help you in this capture the flag. So things like network mapping, just a general web browser in case there's some sort of web vulnerabilities. You have pretty much, let's see, there's like, we're planning on doing some sort of wireless, so there's probably also wireless tools like what Crystal's talked about a couple weeks back. There will also be things like exploit frameworks like Metasploit and a couple other reverse engineering tools like OllyDebug and things like that that might help you break other vulnerabilities in the system. And you're given a range of IP addresses. And the reason I say a range of IP addresses is if I gave everybody in the competition like, oh, go attack 192.168.0.1, how fun is that? Like, you know where the target is. You have 7 teams jumping on one box at the same time. Like it's essentially just a race condition after that. It's whoever can type the fastest. So essentially what I'd say is, hey, you have 192.168.1.x. So you would have to sit there with Nmap and do it in a smart way, not just 1-255, and scan the network and find where hosts are. And then from there, scan those hosts and say, oh, is this running a web server? Is this running XYZ? And so rather than giving everybody a target and saying, okay, log on to that and fire, you have to find your target. And that goes along with what you're not giving is specific IPs. And passwords. You're not giving any, like, from the get-go, you're not given any sort of passwords or logins or anything like that into the systems. Definitely there will be Easter eggs though, like, say for example, cop hint HTML comments on a web page, like, oh, the admin password for this box is XYZ. So, like I said, look for things in web pages and that sort of thing. Yeah, I couldn't really fit all of it very neatly, but that's okay. We don't read this anyway. Don't interfere with the CTF software, which I mean, you can, but I'd like to know how you broke it, because of course, I'm probably not the most organized and secure coder out there. And I guarantee you there's going to be exploits for the actual software I've written. Like, it's just a fact of life. But my rule of don't interfere with it is like, say for example, you figure out how to spoof score codes. Like, you can say back to the server, hey, I just scored 2 million points. Like, cool, but you're not going to win that way. Or maybe you will if I think it's cool enough. But no, really, like, there comes a time and a place for that, like especially at the skirmish at Frag Night. That's perfectly applicable, but during actual competition, it's not really something you should focus on. And also, the scoring engine is going to be communicating back and forth with all these hosts. So I'm going to give you a static port, like whatever, 5901 or whatever port I want to run the scoring engine client software on. And if you block that port, your client isn't going to talk back to the scoring server, which means you're not going to score points for it. So I understand the whole block all the ports with the firewall rule, but probably not the best idea if you want to actually score points for that server. Yes?
What are you allowed to bring with you?
Honestly, you can, if you want to, you can connect your own machine to the network. You can set up your own virtual machine. You can do whatever you want. It's just, don't expect it to not get owned. Like,
right.
Part of the rules are anybody's client computers are attackable. Like, anything on that network is attackable, be it the one you log into or servers you find along the way. So, don't plug it into the network unless you want it to be owned.
I was thinking more along the lines of, can we bring, a bunch of pre-made scripts
Go for it. Perfectly fine. So any tools you create, any tools you find, that's fine with me. So, honestly, like Zach said, a physical attack. Last summer, I actually participated in some sort of cyber camp capture the flag deal, and there was 5 or 6 teams, and it got pretty competitive. I mean, there was definitely some teams that didn't have the same grasp as other teams, but for a while, I was walking back and forth between other teams saying, oh, that's cool, how'd you do that, how'd you do that? Grab an IP address and watch them type in the password, then run back to my console and take it from them. Because there was no rules against it. I mean, social engineering, perfectly fine. So, and in the same vein, perfectly fine here. If people are stupid enough to talk to you, and take their password. That's what I did. There was one time actually where I had the rest of my team finding machines for me and like just going out and taking machines from other people. And I was watching this other team and I was like, oh, that's cool. What box did you get into? And the IP address looked really familiar. And I was really concerned. So I was talking to him. He's like, oh yeah, we just got this Windows machine from blah, blah, blah. And I saw the IP address and I was like, oh crap, that's my machine. So I ran back and booted them off. So just because they talked to me, I knew they were trying to get in and I kicked them out. So, and the PS on the bottom, like I mentioned earlier, the machines you log into are fair game. So when you get in, there, you never know. I could have put nice little Easter eggs in your actual login machines as well. So secure them too, or you would feel bad. Okay, so kind of a brief rundown of what to do when you get on the network. Like I said, you're getting a range of addresses, so scan the network, kind of like Puzzle Challenge 1. We had like 3 or 4 people solve it, which is cool. And then, like I said 5 seconds ago, secure your own login machine, because your machine is a scoreable target too. And when I mentioned things like Ollie debug and other binary related, so not network related, but program related debugging tools, which we will go over in the Red Team Black Hat talks. We'll teach you how to break actual like binaries and how to buffer overflow, that sort of thing. Just simple things. It's not going to be anything too crazy. But those will give you codes that you can turn in for more points. So not only can you hack machines on the network, but you can also hack programs on machines on the network for more points. And I keep stressing this, so obviously it's going to be something in the competition. Check for websites. If a machine has port 80 open, obviously, well, not obviously necessarily, but there's a very good chance it could be running some sort of web server. And with that, some sort of website with some fun information. And last but not least, talk to other teams. Maybe they'll be nice enough to help. So, yeah, trust me, they are. Things to practice. This talk will definitely be up by the end of today, if not early tomorrow, so you guys can actually look at this and be like, okay, this is what I need to practice. Nmap, it's a network mapping tool to help you find the hosts. Metasploit is kind of a script kiddie's wet dream, really. It's a pre-compiled exploit framework that says, essentially, you can say, hey, my target is 192.168, blah, 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 and go ahead and scan it, tell me what OS it's running, and then tell me what vulnerabilities it has. And then go and launch those vulnerabilities, and just bring me back a shell whenever you're done. It's like, okay, cool, go do that. It'll come back and you'll have a shell. So that's really one of the easiest ways to get into these machines on the network, is just run pre-compiled exploits. And nobody's going to hate you for it. So, learn how to use things like SSH and remote desktop. Those are going to be really simple ways to get into these machines. Heck, I might even have some clients on the network with default passwords like admin and change me or that sort of thing. So remember those. And within the whole admin change me idea, scripting languages, like you could write up a simple 2-line program that says, hey, go to every single address in the 192 space and try to connect to it over SSH with change me and admin. And before you know it, you could have 7 remote consoles back. So learn how to do things like that. And all of this stuff, like if you're curious at all, you can hit any one of us up on IRC, probably me, so you don't anger anybody else. Hot Dogs doesn't want to talk to you, apparently. And also, setting up firewalls. Like, yes, this is very offensive, but you do need to be defensive if you don't want to lose your flags.
So essentially,
Questions? What's up?
so that pre-made, excuse me, that pre-made script you're talking about where you can go and find fix vulnerabilities,
Yeah, it's an entire framework. It's not like a,
you could essentially run that on your own machine to find your own machine's vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And lock them out.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Metasploit isn't so much as a vulnerability scanner
That,
as a vulnerability exploitation framework. So once you know the vulnerabilities, you can exploit them in Metasploit.
Any other questions?
so I could just bring in a laptop running like Backtrack and plug it in?
Go for it.
That would probably be better than
Yeah.
not running Backtrack.
Yeah. What Swiss is talking about, Backtrack, is a penetration testing Linux operating system based on Ubuntu, which essentially gives you all of Ubuntu, so like the web browser, all the basic GUI functionality, that sort of thing. But then it comes preloaded with like hundreds of different penetration and hacking tools, so like Metasploit, Nmap, Nessus, all these different tools. That's a really good way to learn stuff because you load up Backtrack and then you're like, what does this do? And you click it and you start playing around with it and then you're like, oh, this is cool. So that's a really good way to learn about other tools as well. Questions?
So I'm new to all this. When I think of downloading or somehow getting a hold of these tools, I feel like I'm setting myself up to get exploited at the same time. So where's a safe or secure place, a reliable place to access these tools?
That's not Swift.
Well, you can ask me, or also I have some resource links on the Swift webpage, and I'll be compiling a list of capture the flag related resources, so like Backtrack, where to get Nmap, where to learn all these things, because it does seem like I definitely agree with you that you can't trust the internet at all, but there are a lot of people that are working on this for good, for like saying like, hey, we want to use this so we can tell people how we broke their things so we can fix it. So definitely Swift, I mean, just talking with other people, listening to security podcasts, once you integrate yourself into the community, or at least just follow the community, you'll see where everybody else is going for their tools. Any more questions? What's up?
Random question on what's the background on your Prezi?
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. So there we go.
All right. All right, so next up, we're going to have Swiss, and he's going to talk about SSH tunneling.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to talk about tunneling your HTTP traffic through SSH. You can tunnel almost anything through SSH, but I'm mostly going to be talking about HTTP traffic. Why would you do this? The main time you do this is when you go to an event like Scale or just any hotel. They have their Wi-Fi, and there's other people on that Wi-Fi. And you shouldn't trust anybody ever, because everybody wants your information. And also because you feel a lot cooler when you're sitting there and you're watching somebody else browse the web and you go, they're not secure and I am. This makes me feel good. Alright, so first I'm going to talk about how to do it in Windows. I took a ton of screenshots for this, but is everybody here familiar with PuTTY? Has anybody? Alright, so what PuTTY is it's an SSH client. I'm not sure what it stands for, but because Windows doesn't really come with tools that are useful, like SSH, so you have to get them from other places. PuTTY is from this link. PuTTY.com does not work, as I learned. Alright, so when you originally try to connect on Windows, it's a VM inside my Mac. You're going to get the original IP you're connecting from. That's actually the IP for the dorms. So then you start up PuTTY. And when you start up PuTTY, you get this nice screen. You get, the host name will normally be blank, and then down in the connection area, down here, you'll see it says SSH, or you won't because it's really small. When you go down there, you should enable compression. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but it makes it go faster. I always do that. And then you go down to the tunnels. When you're down in the tunnels, you have a couple dialogues. You have whether local ports should accept connections from other ports. That's if you want to set up your Windows box as a server for other people to kind of tunnel through. I don't like doing that. And then down here you have the destination places. You have to click, you should click on dynamic, because then you'll be able to tunnel a lot more than just your SOCKS 5 traffic through it. Or you can tunnel a lot more. You type in the source port. I use 2080, or on this one I used 8880. It can be any number at all. All you have to do is you have to remember what number you put in there. You click add. It pops up here as D8880 or D2080 if you use 2080. And then you go back up top. You put in your host name. You guys can all use login.csupomona.edu, which is the school server. You use your login name like you would on Bronco Direct. And then when you open it, you put in your username and password. This one's on Swissbox, so I logged in as Swissbox, I put in the password, and then when I reloaded Firefox, or not yet, when I went into Firefox, I go in, click Options, over into Advanced, click on Network, you go to the Settings, and in the network settings you'll find the proxy configuration. Usually it'll start with Use System Proxy Settings, but changing the system proxy settings in Windows is a pain. And also, it's nice to know that it works right. So just set it in Firefox, click Manual Proxy, and even though you think you'd be setting up an HTTP proxy, you're going to want a SOCKS proxy. So there you type in localhost because it's your computer that's having the port open. You type in the port that you put in there, whether it was 2080, 8880. You make sure it's SOCKS 5. You click OK. And then when you reload the page, you can see now it's 209 Frantech. It thinks I'm somewhere out in Wyoming because I'm no longer connecting from where I was before. Before I start on the Linux, I'm going to kind of explain how the tunnel's almost working in my mind. This is educated talking out of the ass right now. So basically, what you have to imagine is normally when you try to connect to something, you'd be connecting directly to Facebook. You'd send your information straight there through the Wi-Fi, and then it would send it back. When you set up a tunnel, you're setting up almost exactly that. You're setting up a pipe to your server that has walls of encryption, like the pipe's made out of encryption. Now, when you want to go to the web page, pipe has two pipes. It works. And when you send the information, it's sending it all encrypted over to your server. And then you know that the link between your server and Facebook is secure because, or hopefully it is, because nobody's sitting in between your server and Facebook stealing all your traffic. And that way, it's almost your server communicating with Facebook and then sending you the information back through that same encryption. So anybody that's sitting on the network would just be getting this SSH encrypted traffic. And to my knowledge, nobody's cracked SSH yet.
If there's only one pipe made out of encryption, how can it go both ways?
It's a magic pipe.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think that when you do that, it might open up I don't know. I'm not going to sound even stupider.
Magic.
Yeah, magic. But when you're doing it in Linux, I like Linux more because it's more command line and I don't have to click buttons. When you type, it's just a single command to open up this thing, rather than all that clicking and putty. You type in SSH -capital D, and the capital D means dynamic port, 2080, and you don't actually have to put that colon localhost 80, that's unnecessary. And then you just type in your username, and then whatever the server you're logging into is. For this one, I'm showing username at login CSU Pomona. For me, I'd be going username at server2.veryoblivious, stuff like that. And then you could do that same thing in Firefox and Linux, but what if you want to use something else? Say you want to Skype a friend, assuming you have friends. Say you wanted to just use any program in Linux that would connect via that you don't want people stealing the information from. Then what you do is you install this program called TSOCKS, which I learned about just recently. It seems pretty common. And after you install it, you have to edit the tsocks.conf file. I use Vim for this. Some people use Nano, and some people use weirder programs. And in that file, all that it needs to say is it has to have the server as 127.0.0.1. That's saying localhost. That's the loopback address to get back to yourself. And then you're saying the port, whatever port you set up for the tunnel. You're telling it where it needs to look to connect to. Then you start up the program. So you do tsocks Chromium, because Chromium browser uses system proxy settings. It doesn't let you actually set your own, which is kind of come in handy. You could do tsocks Firefox so that you don't have to reconfigure Firefox after you're done and all that. And if you do it right, you'll end up with your faraway address again. So here, any questions on this?
Can I hack that?
Gradius is allowed to try. That's the only one.
Okay, so next up, we have 01, and he's going to talk about ARP spoofing as soon as he gets the presentation up. Give, it's like 5 minutes.
I've never used these. Yeah, I don't know. I learned it out last night at 10 p.m. Because I was trying to do it all for the IP tables and I didn't understand. I didn't understand the whole wrapping of the songs. I can't do the IP tables, but I was trying to.
And
You don't have a presentation. Well, do.
This is why I use
Remove
Google Docs.
unreadable content.
great.
Remove
Yeah,
all content?
All
What?
that unreadable content that I put in there.
Other than that, Gaffy,
Okay, so this is going to be a really, really brief overview of ARP poisoning. And my arrow keys don't work.
Those look like you're focusing.
Now you're.
Shut up. Before we go into ARP poisoning, we should probably go over ARP. So ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol, and it's how you get MAC addresses from IP addresses. So if you know your OSI, that's like layer 3 to layer 2, which is beyond the scope of this presentation. So there's 4 basic ARP messages that you have, and that would be a request, reply, and I don't think, it's probably not the correct name, but I call it a reverse request and a reverse reply. And so a request goes something like, I need to send some traffic to this IP address. So, you know, you've got machines on a network that one machine needs to send traffic to another machine, a print job or something. What the fuck is your problem? You snickering? Hold on.
I was snickering at him.
I need to send some traffic to some IP address ABCD, so who has this address? And the reply goes something like, I have this IP address and my MAC address is some MAC address. And the reverse, as you can imagine, goes in the reverse. So who has this MAC address? I have that MAC address, here's my IP address.